Hello, everyone. D. Alfred Ostrowski here. In this recording, I'm going to be giving a demo on the Aptos blockchain. I'm going to be working through your first NFT on Aptos. I'm going to be leveraging, as before, the aptos.dev documentation with some slight modifications. I'm going to be working directly, as I usually do, on Amazon EC2 instances. And I'm going to provide all of the instructions on my GitHub as usual, so you can step through and work through this very quickly along with me and be up and running with your first NFT on Aptos blockchain. So let's get started. As usual, I'm assuming nothing else than an Amazon account and a PPK key generated and some means to access that instance. You can use the Cloud Shell. I like Putty. That's my preferred means. You can use whatever suits you best. It's secure shell from your Mac or whatever. And as usual, I'm doing everything on this instance for the purpose of transferring technology directly to you, so you can get up and running immediately and take it wherever you want. Put it on your own platform, get it working somewhere else. But in my opinion, being up and running is always better than wrestling with administration on your personal machine. So here you can incrementally step through, get it up running on this platform, this preferred architecture that I use, and then use it to your advantage and take an insight from this to accelerate your implementation on any alternative. Maybe it's Mac, another version of Unix, or Windows, or whatever your preference happens to be. So I'm up and running. I use a T2 instance. This is a good thing, right? As opposed to a lot of my tutorials working with Ethereum, that we have to use a much more expensive C5 instance to be able to simulate the blockchain. Here we're going to be not simulating, but rather directly engaging with the dev environment with Aptos. So we should be up and running at this point. Let's take a look at it. I do a refresh. Sometimes it doesn't push it, so I'm up and running with my instance. I got a fresh instance. Okay, we're going to go through this. Bear with me. Okay, if you already did this initial video with the first transaction, you can move forward, because I'm going to use the exact same steps, but it doesn't take that very long. If it was, I consolidate that to a single video. But I keep on running these installations. Why? Because they break over time. And that's a big problem, right? Because it is a time soak to be able to go in and work through the administration, right, to get this working appropriately. So let's bring up the terminal and get that up and running. And we're going to be having this up and running immediately. And I'm going to work through the DevNet Explorer, and we can validate our transactions right on the DevNet and run through the script and talk through it a little bit and give you some insight and accelerate your work on this platform. Okay, so let me drag it over here. It popped up the other screen, and I'm up and running. I don't password protect any of this. It's just a sandbox for me. In many cases, I'm running production. That would be a different situation, right? So, and again, as usual, I'm just cut pasting in my commands, and I'm going to be providing this, all my steps as I have run them. And you could follow through in most cases exactly at the same pace that I'm presenting this to you. Hopefully that is your case. So this should run about 20 minutes or less, and you'll be up and running. Okay, and you'll be up and running at a working example, which to me trumps not having it working on your preferred platform. At least a version up and running, in my opinion, is just really taking a quick step towards the solidifying of your understanding. Most importantly, to be able to go in and, after you get it up and running, do some modifications, get some ownership of this, right? And see how it changes according to your changes. And get ownership of the software, right? That's how we learn. You're only going to learn so much about reading about it, right? You have to be hands-on. So here I'm going through a node installation, and I'm grabbing it from node source. I like to do an npm install. Doesn't work that way to give me the latest version with Ubuntu. I'll give you associated references. You can look it up for yourself. But if I do, let's say, an npm install on node or related cloud command install, I'm not getting the latest version of nodes. So I have to grab that from node source. Otherwise, I'm going to be running a version that's going to complain and give me deprecated errors or soon to be deprecated. And we don't want that, right? So we want to keep it up to date as best I can. And I'm going to try to take the time out in some of my earlier videos to backdate that. Probably in most cases that I've tried, a lot of my earlier videos with Solidity, it's working okay with node 20, but over time, everything, especially pulling down versions from the cloud, it's going to break over time and need some slight modifications. And that's where you're turns into a time soak, right? You're going to be spending extra time with the admin. So there we go. We have all the necessary commands. Building our node from node source didn't take too long. So bear with me if you went through this already. So the next thing I'm going to do is install Aptos. And again, I'm following exactly the same steps that provided with my first transaction. I'm assuming that perhaps you didn't see the prior video that I made on this. So again, it doesn't take that much long to work through this. So that's why I'm doing it here. I'm putting in enpm module, because we're going to be using that per the documentation. Now, they also subscribe that you need to use Python, even though I'm using TypeScript, which is the preferred language for this platform. They want me to use a CLI installer. I have found that using Aptos SDK relieves that necessity, and it also helps me avoid an error as I actually do the npm install. And that is really the major deviation that I have from the documentation as presented. Everything else is pretty much running verbatim, but either it works or doesn't work. So this is what I did to get it to work. This is what worked for me. And again, you can take it to wherever you want. But so here we go. I'm installing Aptos SDK, and that gives me the functionality of the CLI installer. It is somewhat counterintuitive, in my opinion, to be doing it from pip because I'm not doing a Python-based installation. But that is the way that it was defined in the documentation. If I get more insight on that, I will be presenting that. So now I'm doing a git clone. I'm not following the exact command. I'm using the same git clone from my first transaction. However, this is working with NFT, so I don't need that variation. And again, some of the administrative nuances between the first tutorials, as I get more insight on them as I move forward with more complicated examples, I'll try to put that in as further content to give you a better idea of exactly what's going on with this. So there we go. We have that installed. We have all the necessary preliminary installs. So now I can go to the TypeScript directory and run up that example. So I'm going to do a npm install from that and watch that up and run. That's not going to take too long. And this was problematic, the FFI NAPI, when I followed the instructions verbatim. So that's why I have the variation. You can try it directly on this platform, but it gave me errors, and I'm not exactly sure why. Okay. So now I can run the example, simple Aptos token. Well, let's do it. Watch it run. So we generate addresses, and we generate initial coin balances, and we have a lot of things going on here. So we generated the collection and tokens, and we have a lot of information to deconstruct, which I'm going to take a quick stab at that after do a slight modification. We have token ID, collection ID. One thing is not printing out is the transaction ID. So I'm going to do a slight modification, and we can pull up the Explorer and validate our transaction that actually worked on the DevNet. So the DevNet for Aptos is what's being specified in the script, and we'll edit that in a second, take a quick look at it. But just as a quick overview, transferred token to Bob from Alice to Bob. It's created with Alice's account, and then we transfer it back to Alice, and then we check the Alice's NFTs and Bob NFTs, and it is, one kind of do a unit test here. Should be 1, it is 1, and it should be 0, is 0. So let's grab the transaction. It's not being printed out here, and then we can pull up the DevNet Explorer for Aptos, validate that transaction, and then take another deeper look at the script that's being run here. So I'm just going to do an edit on this, and I'm going to do a slight mod on this, right? So I'm going to do Aptos token. Whoops, I got to do token DS. I'm sorry, TS TypeScript. There we go. So we're in this, and I'm going to grab, I'm going to fast forward to it. And again, we'll break this down at a lower level here. At the first transaction, I'm just going to do a console log, because I want to grab that transaction hash. So I'm going to do TXN hash, just as you see at the top of the screen, dump that up to the console. And let's rerun it again and grab that. So I'm running the simple Aptos token. Let's watch it again. And now I can bring up the Aptos Explorer. And the Aptos Explorer is up here. I put in the URL for your reference. This is all in README install on my associated GitHub. So let's grab that address. I printed it just below the collection and token. So I have an actual transaction address. So let me pull up the Explorer. I have that here. And I'm going to do a search on that address. Okay. So it may take, it took a couple seconds for it to take hold. This isn't too bad, okay, performance-wise. And it dropped down here. So what did that tell me? That it found it, and I can do a lookup on that. So it's successful. I have that transaction is validated on my DevNet, right? Successful. I have the sender. Let's double check that sender. So here again, we're doing a little bit deeper dive, and we can find out, is it the right transaction? Did I just get lucky? So 0x17455D and 074, and this looks appropriate with the sender, right? So, and I have the associates. I was minting the token, and I have associated information, gas fee, and everything. So there's a lot to deconstruct here, right? But this is the starting point. And again, it's good to have a good feel for working with the Explorer, and also want to check that you're on DevNet and not looking at the other blockchains, the mainnet and testnet, because this is being written to DevNet, right? So now taking this information, we can edit that file, and let's just step through that a little bit more detail. You see the name. Let's just look at from the output. I have the coin balances again, and there's a little more to deconstruct here. The collection token, I have the transaction hash. I have the collection name, create address 0745, the token data. I have a JPEG that's being associated with this example, and a current collection, and then I have the transfer Alice to Bob, Bob to Alice, and the validation of their NFTs. Let's do a little bit deeper dive, and then we can wrap things up here, right? So start from the top and work our way down, right? So I have import dot environment, associated libraries, and we spoke to this again. The URLs is pointing to my DevNet. It's really convenient, right? It's packaged in the distribution, and I don't have to step through a lot of URL definitions and everything. So I'm up and running pretty quick within these test scripts, a lot faster than I would in some of the other blockchains that I've dealt with, right? So here I have a provider, the faucet client. This is outstanding, right? That I can just pull it out of the faucet, and I don't have to go through somewhat painful exercises that I do with Ethereum, right? Here I can generate the Aptos token associated with the client and also with the coin client, and create 2 new accounts, and I print out the associated addresses. And I can take those addresses, and in the same fashion, I can do a lookup on that with the Aptos Explorer and track that appropriately. Here I can fund the accounts, as I did, and do a check on the balances. We created a collection associated some definitions for max supply, and wait for it. So these are synchronized. They're not going to get ahead of themselves. I do a mint on the token for the NYAN JPEG as Alice's initial token, right? So the furnace NFT. Wait for that transaction. Here, this is where I publish that transaction. We validated that on the Explorer, right? Checked out the sync module. We take a look at that. That's on the bottom. And then we did grab the collection data and printed that out. And here we're grabbing the token balance and the associated token data. We have to do conversion to string to be able to print that out to standard out. And here we did transfer on that token and print out the associated balances and wait for the transaction, and then grab the associated final balances and printed out the balance. And here we have some detail on the get token information. And I'm not going to talk through all the detail here. I think you can see the basic functionality that's being provided. And in further examples, we're going to get a little bit deeper in the weeds in that. But here, just want to get up and running and make sure that you can generate your first token on Aptos. Here we also look at the validation of the network and provide the associated error checking if there's any kind of problems. So there you have it. It's your first NFT working with Aptos Blockchain. I hope you enjoyed the content. Thanks for listening and take care. Talk to you soon. Have a great day. Thank you.